are Tyrians. We are many races, several professions. We practice the arts of combat as well as healing. We have foes, and we fight them without mercy. And it's time for us to claim back what is ours. It's time for us to claim back Tyria from the terror of the Elder Dragons. We can't go on living our lives in fear. We have to fight. We have to make a stand. This is our story.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 12 of the Chronicles of Tyria podcast, a Guild Wars 2 podcast for fans, by fans. It's Lag here, and I'm here with Naveen.
Hello!
And not here with Dent, unfortunately. He was supposed to be here, but he had some emergencies to take care of with some friends of his, so he won't be able to make it here tonight. But we'd like to thank anybody who's come out and viewed any of our previous episodes. If you want to check them out, you can view it at CoTPodcast.com or check out our YouTube channel at CoTPodcast. If you like it, please subscribe, tell a friend, etc. Other things that I always say every other podcast. That's getting old at this point.
Next time I'll take over.
Yeah, that's fine. You can have that part because it's too much. 12 episodes worth.
I don't think you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I can keep going. It'll be fine. But anyway, so we're not going to do our typical kind of community and lore piece like we normally do. We're actually going to be doing another interview, and today our interview is going to be with Temperhoof.
Hello.
He is... you may have remembered the name mentioned when we did the interview with Crackbone from Guild Wars 2 World vs. World. He is the kind of, I don't know what you call it. The Professions Workshop is his brainchild.
Essentially.
Okay, essentially. So we will be talking about him personally, and we'll also be talking about Professions Workshop, how you can get involved, and all that kind of stuff. So, but just to start this off quick, we just had a couple of comments from our episodes from last week when we talked. We briefly touched on one question regarding the Sylvari. And we just had a couple of comments. Zoo Zebra said that the name of the Sylvari that never had the Dream of Dreams that we mentioned, his name is Malik, and the story that it is tied into is From Life Goes. I guess that's the name of the story, I believe.
Where Life Goes. I guess
Where Life Goes. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
And I don't know if that's if that's the name of the choice. I don't know, but either way. No. The only other thing, we got a couple other comments on that. I guess it's Lucifer. So Lucifer PE on our most recent podcast said, I think that if Sylvari were to somehow lose their memory, the connection to the Pale Tree would remain, but they might not be exactly cognizant of that connection. And that's something we actually hadn't thought about as a way to deal with that. If they lost their memory, will they still have any memories of the Dream of Dream? Mm-hmm. So, that's kind of interesting. And then our Jalinar from our forums, you guys should probably know the name by now. Comments on just about every single episode that we have. But he's also our expert language decipherer. And I know he got a bunch of Asura to decipher from this most recent stress test that was just a couple hours ago, actually. Mm-hmm. But he said, and spoiler alert for everybody, to add to Wooden Potato's theory about the Sylvari that doesn't know what the dream is, some Sylvaris can become what they call soundless. A soundless is a Sylvari that decides of his own free will to separate himself from the dream and the nightmare, which requires a high level of concentration. If this Sylvari is as old as we think he is, he could have forgotten since he didn't feel the dream for a really long time. And yeah, I actually remember running into some people that were called soundless when playing my personal story.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was. I think it was maybe an event or like a heart quest or something. But they are there, so I did encounter them, and I didn't do the same storyline that they're talking about. I did the Green Knight and let's what's it called? Act with wisdom, but act as my choices. But I still ran into soundless. And then and Jalenark has a specific one for Naveen.
Oh.
It says, and for Naveen, there are opportunities in Guild Wars 2 to uncover some of the most ancient lore, including previously untold tidbits about the Seers and their story, but such information will be very difficult to come by. And that's a quote from Rhys Sosby in an interview with Guild Mag from 2010.
Oh.
But it should still be relevant.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I just wanted to touch real quick on, we mentioned in that last one about how what's up with ArenaNet not doing anything for Guild Wars 1 on any kind of beyond content for Alona, because we said they'd done it for everything. But if you look back at some of the older interviews, and just in case anybody saw this and wanted to bring it up, I figured I'd kind of nip it in the bud. They had mentioned John, I think it's Stumi. He did one of the interviews. He did the Hall of Monuments interview recently, where he talked about the stuff that's coming out in the Hall of Monuments.
Right.
He stated that when he and the live team were going to look at Alona, they would like to expand on the story of Palawa Joko and continue that plot, which was left dangling in Nightfall. Now, these were from interviews, I think they were back in 2010. And considering it's like 24 days till Guild Wars 2 comes out, I doubt the live team is going to go back and develop an entire other content.
Right. That would be unrealistic.
They also were things said after Winds of Change, there will be things people are going to be surprised by that the live team will not currently discuss. This is also from the same guy. The Lunatic Court will have quests related to Kieran's return or Winds of Change. Their actions during Halloween 2010, which we already know about when they tried to free Mad King Thorn, have attracted the attention of someone else looking to return in Tyria. The Nameless Lich is hinted to play some parts in this, and this is from that same time period. He said the disappearance of Avenia, who was last seen in Old Ascalon during the Crichton Civil War, which is the war in Kryta, is a part of some, quote, something larger, end quote. And there was also supposed to be a part where King Adelburn would recall the Ebon Vanguard, and Ebon Hawk would be established in Guild Wars 1.
Whoa.
This was all supposed to happen. And it was stated in interviews with stuff from NC stuff to, reputable websites like Massively, Relics of Ore, or Kill 10 Rats, or, stuff directly from the developers. But, again, I think this is all kind of not even going to happen at all. Guild Wars 2 is coming out. If they went back in and did it, yes, I would go in and play it, but I doubt they're going to, because they're kind of moving on to Guild Wars 2.
Right.
But I just wanted to kind of bring that up. Yeah. And we're going to get in. I promise we're going to get to this interview. But there's just a few things we're going to link in the description that I just kind of wanted to bring up ahead of time. Our very own Nuveen just had an article on Talk Tyria.
Hello, whoop, whoop, represent.
So, link
that
that.
was dorky.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about that a little bit before we, or do you want to just link it and they can find out for themselves?
I will link it because it's not that big of an article. So, I don't want to spoil anything before you read it. But it's basically about finding lore characters in Guild Wars 2. So let's say you'd read Ghost of Ascalon or Edge of Destiny. There are some characters in there that you can actually meet in-game, and I've discovered a few of them, and there are references to characters in Guild Wars 1 as well. So go read it up. It's on Talk Tyria, and yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you, Naveen.
You're welcome.
If you guys want to check out the newest Tales of Tyria, it's a 2-hour episode, but we get a lot of information from Freelancer regarding the economy, how to make money, strategies in which he made money. I think he said he made about 600 gold in Beta Weekend 3.
That's crazy. That dude, man.
And he actually gives away a few of his secrets.
Yeah.
So it's worth checking out.
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm very anxious to.
Yeah, it's a lot of interesting things about how to play the market. He doesn't give away all of his secrets.
Right, of course.
But gives away a few.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, this will play into our interview but we're going to link to the recordings of the previous Profession workshops that have already happened. There's been 2 already, so that you guys can go back and listen and see what you missed. Mm-hmm. And our last thing is, obviously, stress test just ended. We'll link on our in the comment box down below a bunch of screenshots that a bunch of Chronicles of Tyria members took during the stress test, myself included. It is from our forum, so you can go and check out some of the pictures and the crazy stuff that we did. And this way, you're like, wow, check out what these guys are doing. They're doing crazy stuff. We should probably join up to that guild and go hang out with them because they're cool people.
Basically. One thing that I really like, though, is you took some screenshots of the preview of the weapons from, what was it called? Shark's Maw?
Yeah, Shark's Maw Cavern. This was an entirely new area that was added in the stress test, because I explored, and we mentioned this on one of the podcasts, I explored a ton of areas to 100% completion in the beta weekend, and one of them was Lion's Arch. Mm-hmm. Well, we got kicked from World vs. World to Lion's Arch when they were resetting the servers, and all of a sudden I noticed there was a vista that I didn't have, and I'd had them all previously. So they added this whole new area in Lion's Arch called Shark's Maw Cavern, and it has a vista in it, and then I thought that was it, but it turns out there's an entirely huge, it's a quest and a jumping puzzle and all sorts of cool stuff. There's a bunch of loot and all this stuff that, I don't want to spoil too much of it, and you can check out some of the pictures. Don't really spoil it, but give away some of the cool stuff that happens. If you guys are a fan of Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and chasing Dampé around in the graveyard, you'll be a fan of this because it's very reminiscent of that. But yeah, there was a vendor that sold pirate weapons for 9,800 karma points, and those are entirely new. They're gold-colored weapons for level 40 characters, but I took a bunch of shots preview from the preview window of what a lot of those weapons look like. Mm-hmm. So you want to check that out too.
I will link in the comments below.
Alright, so now the moment you've all been waiting for, and what Temperhoof has been sitting quietly waiting for.
I don't know if anyone's been waiting on me.
Well, okay. The interview with Temperhoof. So, I guess to start it off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, aside from saying, hi, I'm Temperhoof. More of a recent name, but still. Let's see, about myself. Well, I'm a writer, artist, loving guy, and depending on your point of view, probably a gigantic ass. It just depends on whether or not you've played a PvP game with me. If you get into a competitive atmosphere with me, you probably hate my guts. But if you've played with me in PvE, you probably love me. It's like I'm a Gemini, but as my girlfriend keeps repeatedly telling me, I'm such a Sagittarius. So
nice.
So that's pretty much me.
All right.
You said you were an artist. Do you draw? Do you do comics?
Well, I do some drawing. I do some digital painting, and I do have a degree in digital arts. It's just lately I've been diving a bit more into the writing aspect. So I've actually been putting my artistic abilities to the side, focusing a lot more on writing. I have a blog on mmorpg.com, and I submit articles there pretty much either a week or every other week. And a lot of them is just very deep information about Guild Wars 2. I like being thorough, and I just really enjoy putting together words, because I'm also working on writing novels, but that's a different story.
And on mmorpg.com, are you known as Temperhoof, or do you have another nickname?
Yeah, I'm known as Temperhoof there, and okay. I've recently got my blog highlighted, and so the actual blog's title is just Temper's massively overblown ranting blog about gaming, or TMORBG. And when it says massively overblown, when you look at it, you're like, yeah, that's massively overblown, all right. It's like, wow, what is that, 3,000 words an article? Wow, long-winded.
But we'll make sure to link it so that people can go read your 3,000 words overblown articles.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So we know that Temperhoof is what you're going by there, and obviously here. Mm-hmm. Where did that nickname come from?
Well, it's a recent hybrid of a couple of different names. For a while there, I actually went by Temperwolf, and that if you kind of listen to it, it's sort of a play on words because it sounds like Timberwolf, and I have something of a temper when it comes to playing PvP games. I'm known for having infinite patience, but for some reason that seems to evaporate when I'm dealing in a very stressful situation. When it comes to getting my ass kicked by other players, and I just start to grind my teeth and just say, "I'm going to kill you all." But yeah. I might shout, I might whine, I might scream, but primarily I'm shouting and whining at myself, but it just makes everyone else around me feel very uncomfortable. So, the hoof part actually comes in because I'm what you would consider a brony. That's right, everybody, just turn off the live cast right now. He's a brony. Walk away.
Well, then you might as well turn it off every time because 2 of your 3 hosts are bronies as well. We'll let you decide which 2.
So ever since I've taken on the whole brony thing, I added the little hoof element in there. So if you've seen any of my forum avatars, it's always Pinkie Pie going, "Party!"
And you know what? If you're going to party with anybody, you might as well party with Pinkie.
Got to party with Pinkie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you guys. You know, you'd figure a woman would be more prone to be watching that show, but I've never watched it, and you guys both are.
Well, you know, I mean, we could, honestly, you could have just opened up like a 5-hour discussion right now. So
okay.
Can contain it here.
Sorry.
Well, I'm sure there are many other brony casts. We're just not one of those tonight.
Exactly. So, not that we don't care, but yeah, there's, you know what, Naveen, I'll link you to some podcasts and some studies, and you know, figures and things from Hasbro and other places that prove the viewing audience. But anyway, let's continue on the podcast.
I'll just start with the link Temperhoof gave me for an episode, and then I'll watch it.
There you go.
I like that one.
That's a good one.
Baby cakes.
For sure.
Okay, so let's
question.
continue the interview. So let's talk a little bit more about yourself. How did you first get into gaming?
Well, actually, I first got into gaming when I was 6 years old. And my very first game was actually on my father's IBM computer back in the late 1980s. A game called MechWarrior came out in 1987, I believe. And it was around 1987-88 when I first got my hands on it. And, you know, my father just was all like, this game is too complicated for you. The manual was like 50 pages long. You can never, ever play anything like this. And then I end up beating the first missions on my first try. And he's like,
what?
All right, I just don't know anything anymore. But yeah, after that, we got a Nintendo, so that way he can keep my ass off the computer, because I was always playing that damn thing. So I got little Mario and whatnot, and eventually that turned into a Super Nintendo, and then that turned into a PlayStation, and then that just keeps moving on, and then eventually I had my own computer, and, well, sadly I've had a very long life history with gaming, and it has detrimentally ruined me. So many missed opportunities.
I know, right? I think we could all relate.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that, for sure. So, alright, well, we know you've had a long history with gaming. How about your favorite game?
Wow, that's a tough one to tackle.
I know, I always spring that on everybody. So.
Well, I do have a handful of games that immediately come up, as the Asura do say. What is that? Ideas are like cream. The best ones always float to the top.
Indeed. Nice use of Asura in quotes.
Well, when you're playing in the Asura zone an entire weekend, you kind of take on a lot of what they're saying.
Yeah.
Especially those two old farts in Rada Sum. Reminiscing about do you remember the Golem Revolt of 82? It's like, do I ever was hanging by my ears from a signpost.
Oh man, I never came up to those guys. I never saw them in game.
And she's like, well, you shouldn't have asked him for directions. You know how much they don't like that.
Awesome.
But still, actually my favorite game for the longest time was Monster Hunter. And it still is one of my favorite games. I just sadly can't get my hands on it as much as I would like to. It's been kind of restricted onto the PlayStation, onto pretty much that little portable PlayStation. And
yeah, pretty much.
And after a while, I just got tired of looking at that small screen. Yeah, of course, I could plug it into something else, but it just was... I really wanted something a lot more robust. And what kept on, angering me was that Monster Hunter has this big, humongous MMORPG that's for the computer and for the Xbox 360 in Japan.
Yeah. A story of my life.
And... for me, that was, it was an action RPG that required a lot of skill, and it's just one of those games that I gravitate to because it has an extremely high bar of skill to actually get in and enjoy. I mean, this is the kind of game that the very first moment I played it, I ran out with 3 other guys with almost wearing no armor and swords, and we dived on this stupid-looking chicken of a dragon. Literally, he looked like a giant pink chicken, and we just started beating up on him and just saying, yeah, we're going to kill the dragon, yeah! And it just picks us to death one by one, and then we just look at each other and just like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
it was a tough game back then, and it came out before World of Warcraft did, and it sunk its claws into me long before WoW. And so when I finally got my hands on WoW, I just did not see a comparison. WoW was just stand in front of something, press a bunch of buttons, watch it die. Monster Hunter was giant, massive map with arena, big, humongous dragon coming down, diving from your head, and you have to dodge for your life, hit the vital points, cut off its wings, cut off its tail, and just start to try and just rip it apart as you're fighting it and watching blood and everything spurt everywhere. And I'm just like, there's really no competition between these two games.
Yeah. For sure. So Monster Hunter, favorite game. Nice. Good choice. I did get to play some Monster Hunter in my time, unfortunately, as well, on the PSP. And the screen just, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me.
It starts to really get on you. I'm sure someone's listening right now, but you can plug it into a TV. I got the attachment. I still have to fiddle with that stupid PS controller, and it's just not really working for me.
Mm-hmm. So... Alright, so we know your history of gaming and your favorite game. Now, Guild Wars. We know you picked up... Did you play WoW, or was it just kind of like a...
I played WoW for a month, but
okay.
Yeah, I was definitely into Guild Wars and was one of those guys that was keeping an eye on it when it was in development.
Mm-hmm.
I played a lot of the special events, and particularly the big E3 event preview back in the day.
Wow.
And I'm not sure if anybody remembers that, but during one of the E3 events, back when E3 was open to the public,
yeah, way back, yeah, good times.
They hosted a live event where they opened up the servers, and everyone from around the world can just jump in and play. And they were showing off the gameplay at the E3 event, and so that was a fun little thing. That was way, way, way before the actual release. When the game did finally release, I think I played it for probably I've played it up until the release of Nightfall, and by the time Nightfall came out, I was completely burnt out of the game and just could not give it another sliver of my time. And when you know it, Nightfall just completely radically changed everything the game was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Nightfall was, I was in it almost from the beginning, and Nightfall, I just could never get into it as much as any of the other stuff because I'd been in the other games for so long. But, I held out and eventually made my way through it. But, so, alright, well then, so you kind of stopped around Nightfall time. Then, what about Guild Wars 2? When did you first start hearing about that?
Well, and honestly, the very first time I heard about Guild Wars 2 was back in 2010. But I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with that gameplay footage that was released from Germany, and it just basically was an hour of somebody playing the Ranger in the starting zone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I watched that, and I really did enjoy it and really got into it. But immediately after the video ended, I forcibly wiped the image from my brain and forgot about it for 2 more years.
Yeah.
The reason why is because I'm going to love this game so much, I must forget about it. It's for my own good, or else I will follow this game to the ends of the earth, and I will never ever sleep again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's many of us out there that can relate with that, because I know a lot of us were there, 5 years back when it was first announced, waiting for the beta in the second half of 2008 like we were promised.
Which never really happened.
Never happened, yeah.
And I think a lot of you guys are actually happy it didn't happen. I know it was sad back then, but when you look at the kind of product that we have now, it's kind of like, wow. It's kind of like someone just took an author and put them out in the middle of nowhere and said, all right, now you can take all the time you want to finish your perfect masterpiece. No one's going to bother you. And then they come back from that, and it's actually a good book that everyone loves. And so that's the same thing here, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just impressed that NCSoft allowed ArenaNet to take 5 years to make this game. Mm-hmm. You would think with, publishing and all that, and, NCSoft kind of has a reputation for, ruining games and stuff. You figure they'd want something like this to kind of come out as soon as possible to kind of boost them back up. But I guess at the same time, it's better that they waited because they'll have more credibility that, like, wow, they let them wait 5 years to make the most epic game ever.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if this is fact at all, so don't go ahead and saying it is. But I think NCSoft probably has to thank Aeon. I think Guild Wars 2's success is definitely is riding on Aeon's shoulders. Not because it took a lot of inspiration from Aeon, is because Aeon actually didn't do that bad.
Yeah.
It was actually, I wouldn't say it was a fairly successful game, but it definitely got a pretty good following there for a while. Even I was playing it for a little bit. But there were a lot of people, and still are a lot of people, playing Aeon. And so if it wasn't for that income flow from that game, I don't think NCSoft would have given Guild Wars that much time.
I never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've played Aeon, but just a little bit. Not enough to go in depth with the game, but yeah.
I still got a Metal Tin Collector's Edition sitting up where on my shelf somewhere.
Yeah, I never got into it. I did think about getting into it so I could get the wings emote for Guild Wars 1, but never got around to it.
Wings emote's not really all that it's cracked up to be.
No, I've seen it. It's not worth buying a game that I might not ever play.
Yeah. Well, back to Guild Wars.
We haven't left it.
Yeah, Aeon and everything.
We're talking about Guild Wars because of that.
Yeah, that's true. But there's several aspects to Guild Wars as well. We know that there's PvE, PvP, I'll just call it dub. And we know that you seem to be a real serious fella. But will you be playing PvE?
Oh, yes. Actually, when it comes to the PvE side of Guild Wars 2. I'm definitely going to be playing it, but I do believe the first thing I'm going to really be doing is diving into the very robust PvE that Guild Wars 2 does offer. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I've actually just sat back and enjoyed a PvE game. Many of the games that I've been doing these past 10 years have just been running through the content to get where I want to be, and the only time where I had to go through PvE content was Final Fantasy XI, but that felt more forced than me just actively going through and enjoying myself. Right. Mm-hmm. Because I played Final Fantasy for like 9 years on and off, and that was a very interesting relationship. That game is a harsh MMO.
I knew some people that really were into that game, but I never got into it.
Yeah, me neither.
It's still around. There's a lot of people still playing it, still really into it. So into it that they don't really realize Guild Wars 2 is around the corner. Mm. Yeah, I know. I mean, I've been trying to talk them into it. I'm saying, hey guys, you don't have to keep breaking your back over that game anymore. It's actually something that might satisfy you, if you believe it or not. I know it's hard to believe, but there's something out there that might actually work better.
Yeah, right.
I know that game is sort of based on, well, turn-based.
No, not necessarily. The Final Fantasy XI is pretty much your standard dice rolling MMO. Right. It's very, very team based. It's all about the teamwork and the party, to the point that it takes the whole idea of finding your own select group of people. Mm-hmm. Like your classic Final Fantasy party from all those video games, friends that you can depend on and play with day in, day out. A little too seriously, to the point that in order to actually succeed in the game, you had to actually find a small, serious party, a band of heroes, as it were, your own personal Destiny's Edge, to actually get anything done.
Huh.
Oh,
well, I mean,
wow.
I guess that's good in one sense, but if it's that serious that you can't do anything without it, then I could see where that would be taxing.
Yeah, especially for me. I'm not the kind of player that's just gonna go up and say, "Hey, can I be part of your team?"
And the first thing that they were probably going to ask back in the day, prior to Abyss C, was, "Do you have Sky or Sea?" That would be their very first question: Sky or Sea? Sky or Sea?
I don't know. Well, then it'd be like, well, okay, let's just go find someone else. And then it'd be like, why did I pay subscription fee if I'm not even going to be able to play?
That's how it was back in the day, and that's God, it was when the whole Whitegate expansion came out, and then Wings of the Goddess continued that. It was a very brutal atmosphere. Depending on what kind of server you were playing on, many certain guilds had complete control over the late game. They essentially could cherry pick players to allow beyond that threshold to get you into the end game, because everything is a system of raids in that game. And I wrote an article about it on MMORPG called essentially it was about roadblocks with no detours. And all it was a series of roadblocks, one after another. And one of the most difficult roadblocks, a guild would just pretty much stand on that line and say, "You shall not pass unless you get down on your knees and clean my, well, you know." And make sure you get every spot. I want them smelling like ginger.
Nice. Yeah, okay, so I'll stay away from that game.
Well, they've since changed that. That's been eradicated with Abyss C, but then they just replaced one broken system with another.
Right.
So it's been a very interesting time. Well,
so that's why you're gonna try to get them to play Guild Wars 2.
I'm trying. I mean, I'm not trying to force it down their throats, because I'm trying to be very delicate about it. Like, I know you've probably heard a lot of players in the past, particularly some raving SOTOR fans, that, you've been promised that there's going to be this next game around the corner that's going to be just, the saving grace of all MMOs. So I know we've heard that pretty much over and over again for the past 10 years, but what if this time it actually is true? Mm-hmm. Or is everybody just so wrapped up in the fact that they've had so much failure over the past 13 years that now everyone is just a giant cynical jerk, and they pretty much cannot believe anything is actually going to be good, even though something is?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. So here's just a quick question. Do you know what server you and all your kind of affiliates are going to be on when the game releases? No. Currently, I'm working with a number of guilds, 4 of them, none of which I'm actually affiliated with. But the idea is that we're putting together a community. It's a community-driven effort to make whatever server that we land on a very friendly server, one that is willing to basically work with anyone that comes in there, make the PvE side of things really enjoying, have guilds that are not necessarily an alliance, but are well aware of each other, can work together, can quickly communicate with each other, and as the game matures, and as the server matures, and the population on that server matures, eventually move into the PvP aspect. So by the time, maybe a year from now, when we get into the world versus world aspect on a more serious level, because that'll be really the key remaining content we have, everybody will pretty much know each other, and people will be working together and understanding each other, and we can start getting things done. There's a lot of guilds right now that are putting together alliances to try to make the best of launch. Trying to win every single event. Got to win this. Got to win that. But look at a year down the road, no one's going to really give a damn if you win the first couple of rounds of World versus World. I don't care how many times you win. They're not even going to really give a flip. I mean, it's all about how you take in the game down the road. And if you just sit down, maybe slow down, try to actually have a little bit of fun, and enjoy a well-crafted PvE experience, your PvP experience may be even more robust and enjoyable. Here's an example. When I was playing PvE for the first time back in the last BWE3, because the previous times I was devoted completely to World versus World, I found a lot of dynamic events, which after I followed the events to completion, which was several different stages, I noticed that there was a key NPC, sort of like the star of that event. And after following him around, guarding him, making sure he stayed alive, when the event concluded, he turned into a merchant. He was never a merchant before. I never saw this. Who just suddenly got a little merchant thing over his head. So I walked up and saw what he had available. And he had these med kits. I've never seen anything quite like it. I bought a med kit, and it essentially gave me the ability to have an engineer's med kit, and I was an elementalist. So I bought 20 of them, and they pretty much go away when you die, but other than that, they last forever, and it gives you your standard engineer med kit where you have several heals, you can drop an antidote potion, you can drop a speed buff, and if you combine that with several of your other elementalist healing abilities, including your mass res, that pretty much turns you into a heal bot. If you have a couple of these guys running around in World versus World just dropping a bunch of med kits, that may actually prove to be a very beneficial thing for any war effort. Right. And you find some interesting stuff in PvE that you can use in World versus World. I know it seems like there's nothing special in PvE for it, but there is. You just got to find it.
Right. And, I mean, you were an elementalist getting basically engineer's skills. Well, here's a big question. What's your favorite race and profession to play? And do you know if you will have a main character come launch with those professions?
Well, I'll tell you right now, I've put a lot of work into planning my main character for Wars, and I always put some quality time into planning those out. And I did the same thing with Guild Wars 1, where I made this human necromancer that looked pretty close to the one on the box, except I gave her more of a dark mocha-ish complexion, but I called her Skull-less Succubus. Gave her a nice little personal backstory that was just for me in my head, never really shared it. But because of those little things, I always remembered the character and have a little special place in my heart for it. So doing the same thing with Guild Wars 2, changing the name, though, changing the approach. I'm actually going to go with the Asura as a race. Having been introduced to them in the third beta event, I find that not only does that particular race have a certain kind of charm, but they have a personality that really appeals to me. And if you've been listening to the way I'm talking, I almost talk like an arrogant little Asura, even though they're not necessarily arrogant. They just like to talk really fast and sometimes use really big words to make themselves, to display their intellect. Right. And that's pretty much what they are. And so I'm just listening to these guys and saying, this is where I belong. These are my people. So I'm actually... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, so then we know that the Asura is definitely going to be the main race you're going to be playing as a start anyways.
I absolutely love their home city, and I love Metrica Province. That's hands down, in my opinion, so far been one of the best starting zones I have seen. And I come from playing Final Fantasy, as I said before, for 9 years. I really enjoyed the Taru, which are these little short, essentially the Asura of Final Fantasy. I mean, I draw some interesting parallels to those in my recent article on MMO, and I even have a comparison screenshot of the Shantoto I made and the Shantoto from the game, and there's almost no difference. They look very, very close.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the Taru are short little isolated guys that love to study rare and more advanced powerful magics, things that people have forgotten, technologies that no one cares about. They're extremely intelligent. They create golems with funny names. They have a very complicated city, and a lot of players feel that they have trouble navigating it when it's their first time there. But after you stay there for a while, you realize that there are several different shortcuts, and it's actually very easy to get around. But you have to be a native to that certain region. The big difference, though, between Final Fantasy XI and Guild Wars 2 is that the Taru were in their city in Final Fantasy XI. Mm-hmm. They had a very big city, yes. Very beautiful big tree. But if you walk outside that city, immediately walk out of the gate, it's a barren wasteland of nothing. I mean, the monsters are pretty much right up onto the city gates. I mean, where is everything? There's nothing out here. There are no Taru civilizations. There are no buildings. There are nothing here, which says this is a Taru state. Mm-hmm. It's just a big, empty place to fight a bunch of really big yellow caterpillars. But in Metrica Province, with the Asura, you walk out there and it's an extension of their home city, and you see so many of these different complexes and facilities and laboratories that all these little Asura have been making. And this is part of their government plan. See, they don't necessarily have a government. They have what is called crews. And so they have these little groups of people which pretty much follow their own desire for perfection and making their own little crazy little projects. Essentially, they're all a bunch of little washoes from Tenchimoyo. And I really enjoy that. Mm-hmm. The only downside with the Asura, and I think this is probably going to come back to bite ArenaNet in the ass if they don't fix it, is that the character race of the Asura is so exotic, so good, and your fact that you're just pretty much saturated with a bunch of these little people with all these advanced golems, and they're absolutely obsessed with making things, and they're showing it off, and they're doing things, and even hell, Zoja walks around with Mr. Sparkles, which is pretty much her personal golem, constantly praising her everywhere she walks. And you look around and you're like, I want to be part of this.
Yeah.
I want to my golem. I want to make my device. I want to go into an Asuran library, read some goddamn books, find some information, make my device, and show it off. I want to have my own Mr. Sparkles follow me around, calling me a genius everywhere I go, and I'm just going, yeah, you betcha I am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've had the same thought process, and I made an Asura in the last beta, but I didn't really play too much with that character. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I want to make a golem. I want to be able to name my golem whatever I want, and I'd love to have one, come with me as like a companion.
Yeah, and it's something that we definitely are not going to see with the release, but who knows? It's wishful thinking, and we shouldn't expect it. But I would, in the future, like to see them pretty much come out with these race-specific classes. Mm-hmm. And one of them be Golemancy.
Yeah, I think that would be great. ArenaNet's got their weird... well, it's not necessarily weird, and I understand it, but they have their whole concept of not having any, like, the race and the story-type choices that you were to make, say, not allowing you to get access to any content. That's their kind of whole philosophy, so that's why, like, picking a different race doesn't really do much outside of changing your personal story. Obviously it's going to be different for a different race. It gives you different racial skills, but they're not like a huge advantage one way or another.
When I said race-specific, I didn't necessarily mean that, you only had to be an Asura to play it.
Okay.
I just meant something more along the lines of, in order to be a Golemancer, you could travel to the Asuran city and figure out and do a certain event, which will essentially either unlock or allow you to transform your class into a Golemancer.
Oh, see, that would be very cool, and that would actually fall in line with their with their kind of whole philosophy. And I do think that would be cool. And like you said, obviously it won't be for launch, but in an expansion, that would be pretty sweet. I would be a fan of that.
I think a lot of people would, and I think anyone that spends at least a day in the Asuran starting zone, particularly Metrica Province, will also appreciate that as well. Because once you walk away from that really well-built civilization, you're almost left jealous of every Asura there, because you can never really aspire to be as the Asura.
Right, yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, I know we're going on a bit of a tangent here.
No, that's fine. That's kind of our MO anyway. It's running off on tangents.
Yeah.
But I can quickly answer the rest of the question, as also going to be an elementalist as well. Okay. Elementalist Asura. So.
Nice. And what was... I'm an elementalist player primarily myself, so what kind of drew you to the elementalist?
Well... I never necessarily expected I would be drawn to the Elementalist, but after seeing a lot of the stuff that they could do with the dagger as their main hand weapon, I was really impressed and really started to just enjoy having that kind of close combat nasty mage. And then I started to play around with all their other abilities, and lo and behold, the Elementalist can summon every other weapon into existence that they aren't actually physically able to use, and then use it. And they can also combo spells in a very interesting way. They essentially have 20 abilities at all times.
Yeah.
Right side, around the left side of their bar, and it's a lot of work to do to try and actually just keep moving through all of those different atonements and doing it properly. I like that challenge, and I really like the flexibility of the class and feeling like I'm really building up my own power based on everything that I do, like throwing down various different kind of buffs on myself, building up my various ticks of might by doing abilities in my own flames, catching myself on fire, and other things. So I like all those nice little tidbits.
Yeah, no, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head for me too. I mean, I love the fact that, and I've played several other professions, and the ability to have 20 skills that you can cycle through, and that's on the left side of your bar, is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can do condition damage, you could do high, heavy, quick hitting damage, AoE, support, healing, now all kinds of stuff just by switching your attunements, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
The only downside is that the weapons that you use on your main hand have far too much restriction on their range.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much when it comes to the dagger, almost everything is very, very close range and mildly medium. I mean, not even really medium, it's almost medium.
Yeah, I mean, the lightning whip one is real short.
And the longest range weapons come of the dagger brand, come under the water element with the vapor blades, and also the number 5, the one that kind of sends out that block of ice that can briefly daze people.
Right.
That's your longest range ability on dagger. Well, actually, that's not even dagger. That's focus.
That's focus, yeah, because the dagger one, that's the heal, I think, is the 5. That cleansing wave where you splash water.
Yeah, because I don't even use offhand dagger anymore, and it was really hard to pull myself away from Ride the Lightning. I tell you.
Oh my God, I can't do it. I love Ride the Lightning too much.
It was like trying to rip off your arm. It's like, God, I love it. I can't get.
So does that mean you're running focus and dagger then?
Focus dagger is actually my favorite, but I'm still experimenting and trying to play with as much stuff as possible. The staff can be very situational, but if you combine the staff with some various glyphs and actually put some points into arcane, you can turn the staff into one crazy AoE bashing bastard, as it were.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I usually run staff when I'm with a pretty big group of people, just for the AoE and the support stuff, mass swiftness and that kind of a thing.
I recommend running, if you ever find yourself with the staff, definitely put some points into arcane magic and run some glyphs.
Okay.
Because then every time that you use a glyph, you're essentially casting might on yourself, casting regen, casting heal. But at the same time, try out the glyph of storms and also put a point on your staff to double the range of your AoE abilities.
Oh, yeah.
And so what you can do is you can actually throw down, say, your fire meteor storm, and then you can put a fire glyph of storms on that as well. And so you're almost doubling the cast. Even though the actual meteor storm does far more damage, having that extra glyph of storms in there just for a little extra kick doesn't actually hurt anything.
Oh, absolutely. And you're talking to that's BWE 1 and 2. That's pretty much was my strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but
I'm sure you had fun literally raining hellfire on everybody.
Oh my God, particle effects everywhere. But yeah, I moved to daggers so I could use Ride the Lightning just for jumping puzzles alone, so that I can just teleport, or not teleport, but Ride the Lightning and skip over multiple platforms and watch everybody else that's doing it with me have to jump one by one, and I just zoom right by them.
Mm-hmm. That's the way to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and by the way, did you really? I'm just wondering, when it comes to the glyph of storms under the air element, in your opinion, best looking spell in the game or not?
Definitely. Best looking spell. It's definitely up there.
This is that one where it's just bashing the ground with strikes of lightning.
Yeah.
Something that you wish you had on your staff, but sadly it's a glyph. But it's just pelting it with these powerful bolts, and you're just like, ooh, that looks like it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Wish that was replaced static field.
Exactly.
That would be so much better.
I wish it did too. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, definitely one of the best, if not the best. I mean, I haven't played around with all of the different spells from all the different classes, but definitely for Elementalist, that is, top of the list, I'd say for sure. Yeah, maybe other than, I'm a fan of any of the stuff that comes when you summon the Fiery Greatsword. I like being able to just spin in a circle and fly across the map and hit people. I don't know, that one just calls to me every time.
I'm considering building a greatsword build just for the hell of it, but when the game comes released, when you can unlock all the abilities, you can do whatever the hell you want at that point.
Yeah. Very true. Oh man, this game needs to like go to sleep for 24 days.
Hey, Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. Did I say Rumpelstiltskin? Sorry, I meant Rip Van Winkle.
Van Winkle, yeah.
Edit that out. Just give it a good cut, right? And listen, hey, did you hear that podcast? Timberwolf made a fool of himself by getting fairy tales wrong.
Yeah, I'll put myself in the freezer like Cartman did.
I just essentially called you a foreskin of a,
Yeah, that's all right. We can edit that out.
Rip Van Winkle. There we go.
Rip Van Winkle. All right, well, I think that pretty much brings our little kind of interview about Temperhoof on Temperhoof to an end. So now we'll kind of move on to the kind of meat and potatoes of this, all about profession workshops.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to know what they are.
Absolutely. And we know, we've mentioned it to people on our forums and tried to promote it fairly heavily, but as best we can, but a lot of people are like, well, what are they? And we do our best to explain it, but who better to explain it than the creator of the profession workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will only take credit for just sparking that flame. I'm not necessarily one that should say the idea rests completely on my shoulders. After a couple of these pre-meetings that we've been holding, we've been expanding the idea, and a lot of the feedback coming in and suggestions from other people have completely taken the idea that I had into a more realized, more realistic, and better presented direction. So what I initially wanted for these profession workshops was just to hold some nice week-long conversations about a class. About 2 weeks after the release of the game. 2 weeks because you want to give people some time to sit back and enjoy the game, soak it in, to do what they want to do, learn their classes as they are in the more final state. I wanted to definitely ensure it was the more final state because you don't want to start throwing out instruction guides for builds which are potentially going to radically change before the game is released. Abilities may come and go depending on what they decide between now and the release of the game. So with each of these week-long workshops, we were going to focus on doing just one class. And the next week, we would focus on doing another class. We would get a lot of these people from the community, players of that particular profession, bring them in to voice servers, forums, whatever, any kind of media form that we can get them in there to not only talk about the profession, but record what they say, try to get whatever feedback they wanted to offer, guides that they've written, videos they've made, wanted to invite people who were curious about the class to come in, listen, ask questions, have people who have been there to try and tell their side of the story, not to just put down these static build lists to say, okay, these abilities we'll get what you want, have fun, but instead of that, just come in there and talk about how to play the class effectively in the way that they felt to be effective, and to see if certain abilities worked a certain way for a certain type of gameplay. You know, you have abilities people use in World versus World, PvE, SPVP, totally different experiences with each and every one of those, and the idea was just to teach people how to effectively play what profession they were curious about. That was the initial idea. Where it's come now is it's now coming into an actual website that's going to house a lot of this information. At first, I was going to just do this by hand, throwing it onto a wiki and various other things. Anywhere I can basically pour this information and try to just do it myself or with any kind of volunteers. Mm-hmm. But in reality, you know that you can't really do these things alone. In order to make these places successful, you really need an active community providing the information, providing the guides, and helping you out with that.
Right.
So a website seemed to be the best course of action. Not just any website, not like the PVX thing for Guild Wars 1. You want a big, robust website, which is familiar to maybe like League of Legends players that have been to something like Leaguecraft in solo mid. You have these nice build collection websites, and people can provide a little bit more additional information, videos if they want as well, put on there. But we want to go a step beyond even that as well. We want to take those particular build sites and add a little something more. An ability for a user to come onto that website, look up a profession, and not only be able to learn how to play that profession, but be able to view various builds for that profession and the builds that can complement that build or can counter that build. All of this updating daily, all controlled by the website itself via two key systems, which is a tagging system and a grading system. With this updating system, people can submit information, tag it. Of course, the system will try to automatically tag certain things, but a player can then label it with our preset number of tags, and it will amend it to the library. Let's say, for example, a user wants to go to our website to learn about not only how to play a necromancer, but they're curious about playing a necromancer that uses conditions offensively. So they would go onto the website, and then they would pretty much go to the search and look up the tags necromancer, offensive, and conditions. And they would not only be fed instructions and guides written by players on how to play either conditions or condition necromancers or necromancers related to that topic. It will also immediately update for the viewer what is the most popular guide, what's highly rated, what's not good, essentially. They can get a quick idea on what is good for that bracket. If they want to get builds, then they can do the same thing for builds, enter in the information for builds. And then it will immediately update. Well, these are the top-rated builds that are related to offensive necromancers with conditions, and over here are the top-rated counters that are commonly used against necromancers with conditions that are offensive. And down here are the most popular builds that complement the very same thing. We just want a place, a website for people to put information to inform other players how to effectively play a class. Not this is the way to play it or this is the only way to play it, but put in their testimonies, their perspectives, their points of view, and try and just share as much as they can to help the community grow, feed, and inspire other people to make their own unique builds and ideas and learn fast and be able to enjoy the game without having to basically struggle and avoid a lot of that pressure to play well or get badgered by other players that say, well, you're not doing a good job. Instead of just badgering them, they can say, well, there's this website that you can learn everything that you want to know about that class. I highly suggest that you take some time there because it'll tell you everything that you need to know to be successful. You just take 5 hours, read some stuff, try them out, you'll be immensely better.
Right.
Sorry. I could be a little long-winded.
No,
No,
that's fine.
no.
And it's a lot of information that everyone, well, all the people that I've talked to want to know about anyways. And let's say I have a blog and I'm playing the Elementalist and I know that this build works, and then I write down what I'm doing with that build. Where do I go with that blog? How do I get to participate?
Well, what you would do is you would go to the website, and you would first of all you would register for the website and create an account, because the website is then going to grade what content that you put on there. It's a community policed system, and so by creating an account, you'll be able to allow other players to grade on the content that you submit. Then you would go to a submit portion, and then based on what content you want. Let's say that your build had an instruction guide with it, or essentially testimony, and for just the hell of it, you also made, say, 3 videos which demonstrate some of those key tactics that you use that's really unique to that build that no one else does. So you need these videos to demonstrate it. So, since they're builds, you would first go to the submit a build section of the website. You would go through and put the skills, the abilities, the traits, like any other classic kind of builder that you can find almost anywhere online right now. And then you would submit that. And when you submit it, the system is going to detect what you have selected based on a point system that's sort of running in the background, and it's going to request a couple of tags which relate to what build you have. And then you also have the ability to pick and check any additional tags from the list as well. This will allow it to feed it into the system and be implemented well. Well, once you submit that build, it's going to ask if you have any additional information which relates to it that you have. So let's say that you have that instructions. Well, that would be considered either a guide or a testimony. A testimony being more of a brief rundown of your experiences and the tactics that you personally found most effective. A guide is more of a really in-depth detail on how to do each thing with each ability in certain situations in as thorough and as clear as you as an author can physically be. So you would then be able to submit that after you submit the build. He'll allow you to go into a different bracket, which will basically move on to like a next step. You can either submit the build right then and there and be done, and let the other community people try to amend videos and guides and testimonies if they want. But if you want a better, more highly rated build, it's better to provide as much information as possible. So you go through the actual blocks, put in all of the guide information where it requests, and then you submit, and then it asks again, do you have anything else you want to add? And it says, well, okay, yes, I have some videos I want to submit. So then you would go to the submit a video section, and this is immediately following the build and guide area. And then you would be able to put in links to, say, videos that you've already uploaded to YouTube, and you just put those links in there, and then you go ahead and press submit. And then if you have nothing else, you just say done. Then it goes ahead, it posts the build, then it posts the guide which relates to that build, then it posts the videos related to that guide. So if anyone opens up your build, the system will immediately tell them there is a guide relating to this, and these are the 3 videos which best relate to this guide. And if there are any other content on the website, will then be graded under that as the most popular things which may relate. Like, this is a video also by somebody else which used this guide, which used this build, and they linked and they basically tagged to be related to this build that you have here, or there's testimony of somebody using a network of abilities which are similar to this build. All of this will be detected by the system via tagging.
So it's going to be very user-friendly.
We hope so. That's what we really want to go for in the end. It's going to take it's not going to be done. It's not going to be done soon. It's definitely going to take a lot of time to try and get in there and make a lot of refinements to make things work well. Because
it's still in beta version, if you could say.
I wouldn't even say it's in beta version. It's still in what I would consider alpha stage.
On paper?
Still, a lot of it's on paper and still being worked on, and we're trying to steadily iron out each of these steps with each pre-meeting that we do, because officially the profession workshops begin on September 10th, which is 2 weeks after the release. And up until that point, we're hosting pre-meetings every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And all of these pre-meetings are there to discuss how the website's going to be, to get as much feedback from the community as possible on what they would like to see and what they feel would work, and what we need to prioritize as fast as possible for release to make sure it just basically functions. Mm-hmm. And then with community support, steadily build upon the website with every following month. I mean, the game's coming out really soon. We don't necessarily expect to have a fully fleshed out website by then. Mm-hmm. We just want to get something that works. Right. But we really want enough support to take this project and see it grow. And as Guild Wars 2 grows, we want to see this website mature to help essentially the community be informed and play better. We have a lot of players coming in from World of Warcraft, and that was their first MMO. If they're not interested now, they may be interested in further down the road. And let's face it, World of Warcraft is a very easy game. Guild Wars 2 has a much different skill level, and that difference of gameplay may be very jarring. Having a very informative educational website which allows the community to help teach other people in the community how to play more effectively, and inform them, that may help a lot of players in the future not only take better interest in Guild Wars 2, but also just play better. Mm-hmm. That's the ideal. I mean, I can't necessarily teach everybody single-handedly, so we'll see how that works out.
Right. So, I mean, essentially it's a community project. So how can we spread the word?
Well, as I said, we have meetings every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Mm-hmm. And what those meetings are for are to help essentially not only spread the word, but to see who's interested, just get a head count on the people that are really looking forward to this project, really want to see it succeed, really want to do their part to help provide any information they want. By coming in there, you can essentially find different ways on how you can help spread the word about profession workshops. There are so many people in there which can offer some great suggestions. Mm-hmm. I know I myself can't be the key source of everything. It's really a team effort. We just want to see what you can do. If you're interested, drop in on one of those meetings, and definitely we can find something for you to do. That's for sure. And what I said before, on September 10th, that's when the profession workshops officially begin. That's when we start to do each week for each profession. Even if the website's not done by that time, we still want to get in there, talk about the classes, start to find as much information, gather that just big information dump as possible. Mm-hmm. So we can start putting that into just either a skeleton site or something basic for people to start sharing that information in some way. And we just really want to get people in there, even if they don't play the class, again, there and listen, ask questions. We also want people who are very proficient with the class that they play, love their profession, and just want to talk about it and want to share it and want to share some of those really great tricks they found. We want to bring in all those people, get them into the same place, and just have a nice little melting pot of people just wanting to learn, wanting to teach, and wanting to share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to be a part of it. I know there are several Chronicles of Tyria members that have logged in on all of these meetings. Mm-hmm. on Tuesdays. And we're going to try to get as many more people as we can in there. I know you also mentioned on some of the call or the meetings that we're going to list counters to some of the builds too, to help people figure out what to look for when they're playing the build, but also how to counter it if they're going up against it. And let's say, I know how it's going to play. Let me play devil's advocate. So these builds that are going to go up there, people are going to go and they're going to be like, oh, this build looks really good. You guys are having a rating system, right, to rate up and down whether or not people think it's going to be a good build or a bad build, as it were.
Yes.
Right, and that's just going to be basically like a +1, -1 kind of a thing?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got that out there, and these builds are going to be tested pretty extensively between, obviously, people putting them up, but people within the community, too, to try to find holes and stuff in the builds as well?
That's what the testimony system is for. With any build that someone submits, a player can choose to either amend to it with a guide or a testimony or a video. If they want to share their experiences with that build and want to give some really interesting tips, they can submit a testimony and basically link it to that particular build. So when someone looks up the build, the system will detect that there's a testimony based on that build, and it will provide it to the viewer as they're looking at that build. They'll be on the side and they'll say, well, here are some top-rated testimonies. This one's gotten 23 up votes, but 10 negative votes. You can still look at it if you want, but there it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be a huge tool, and I know a lot of us wish there was something developed like this for Guild Wars 1.
Mm-hmm.
Would have made our lives a lot easier. But, yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else that Naveen you want to mention, or that we want to, or Temper, that you want to talk about outside of what we've already mentioned so far today?
Well, just like for people who are listening, even if you're not really, you don't want to participate or whatever, just to spread the word. Spread the word. There must be any of your friends that want to do that. And, friends, family, whatever. Just link them to the meetups and the workshop and get them to participate, because this project needs a lot of people. And it's the community. It's work for the community. So we need people. So just spread the word is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, without the community, this is pretty much dead in the water. I mean, you really can't depend on a handful of people making and testing and playing all these different builds for so many people. You really need to have as much support as possible from anyone that is really enthusiastic to someone that just might be mildly interested in seeing what's going on. Even somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience in writing guides may still be able to record a video of them just playing the build and throwing that on there. Or maybe they can write a little testimony which says, well, this is my experience with this build. I had some success with it. I think there could be some ways to improve it, and stuff like that. You can just provide criticism, positive or negative, if you want. Anything can benefit somebody as long as you take the time to put it there.
Right.
And there are so many people that can be apathetic because many of the other tools out there have just been so difficult to use. They weren't very user-friendly, and sometimes it can be a little confusing, and they're unsure on how to actually do it. Like, say, trying to make a wiki page is not necessarily easy unless you spend several hours on practicing and reading up on how to make a good wiki template and writing all that down. And it's something that the average person really can't get into. So even if you just suck at writing and can't do any of that, drop in on the profession workshops on one of the given dates and just go ahead and talk and share. And anyone can talk and share and just give their 2 cents, because that is important too. Yeah. Even after we have all of our week-long meetings, there's still so much work to do, and we're likely going to have even more group meetings after that. So there's a lot to do and a lot to look forward to.
Right, and I mean, I know for those of you that, even though we said, please link, and obviously do, if you're worried and kind of antisocial and don't feel like talking, I mean, still show up. I don't know, a lot of the time when in the 2 that we've had so far, there's been a lot of people that have shown up, and, they may only make 1 or 2 comments, but for the most part they sit quiet, but they're attentive. Or actually there's been a large number of people that show up and are there, but they only type in the text chat for whatever reason. But they're still there, and it's still a form of participation.
Yep. And that does mean a lot for the people who are building the project. Just being there as a physical body to show your support really is a very big motivator for a lot of people that are trying to get this and pull it together and make it a reality. So even if you can't type, can't talk, can't submit anything, just being there to really show your support goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And plus, you got nothing else to do before the release of the game, right?
Exactly.
You dream about Guild Wars 2? Welcome to talk about it.
Exactly. I mean, it's really, I mean, you don't have to stay the full time either, even if you show up for a little while and then you end up leaving, early. It's fine. Just be there to be a part of it. And I mean, it's going to benefit, it's only going to hurt, really, the community and any Guild Wars 2 players if less people show up or people just don't show up at all. I mean, it's a really good project, and I know Chronicles of Tyria is excited to be a part of it.
Definitely.
So,
and I'm happy that you guys are really excited, too. That means a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, we're doing our best to plug it as best as possible and get the word out there to help, get the interest and get as many of our members as possible in there.
Oh, definitely. Yep.
So the last thing I kind of want to mention quick though is it uses Raid Call as the VoIP service that we conduct all the meetings in, which is a free to use service that you can just download. It's raidcall.com. And you just download it, and you just need to get the meeting ID number. And you just kind of enter that in your search bar, and then it'll put you right in there, and you click the little Profession Workshop group, and that's where it is. But for those of you, I just want to get that out there, that you don't have to, worry. I mean, it's not Vent, it's not TeamSpeak, it's Raid Call, which is awesome and free, and I know a lot of people might be moving to that, Chronicles of Tyria included, for their main, gaming VoIP service, because it's free.
Yeah,
man.
It's free, very efficient.
Oh yes, it's very surprising how robust it is for its current system. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was very impressed with some of its recording options. Even though you don't really get to name your file the moment you record, they'll give you that option when you're done. It has a very nice MP3 codec, which for many other voice IPs like Ventrilo or TeamSpeak, it'll make like several gigs after I'm done recording a meeting. This will automatically make a very nice, clean, compressed codec, which makes it like even 2 hours of recording is 50 megabytes. I'm just like, wow. So that's really nice. Wow. But what's really shocking is the size of the servers. And I mentioned this before, but I never actually specified on just how big it was. We're going to be using Raid Call for that little community effort I was talking about before with the 4 guilds I'm working with. We have a potentially 600 slot server. It can be that big, but we may not necessarily have it that big at the start. But this was offered by Raid Call when we were curious about hosting a large voice IP for a whole server on Guild Wars 2. And they say, well, we can give you something as big as 600 if you like, if you keep it active. And they're like, whoa, okay. And they also said, yeah, we'll also sponsor it and offer prizes and even give you cash returns if need be. I'm like, oh okay. That was. You can really thank the Khajiit Guild for that. The leader, Siren, has put a lot of effort into communicating with Raid Call, putting that in order, and she's the one that did the email and got that fantastic response. Ever since then, we've been really excited and looking forward to putting together a big voice IP for the server that we get on. We don't know which one it's going to be, but whatever we get on, we're going to host it, we're going to moderate it, we're going to host events on it, and at the same time, we're going to, in many ways, mingle this Profession workshop in it as well. So if you're going to be taking part in the Profession workshop, you might also want to take part in the server community that we're at. If you're unsure and the game is already launched and you're on a different server, you're welcome to guest and just come in and do whatever you want, play with us, join. It's all pretty flexible when it comes to Guild Wars 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't know if anybody else has anything that they would like to mention outside of everything we talked about. If not, we can kind of bring this to a close.
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, all my questions were answered. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people now know what they're going to be working with when it comes to the profession workshop, and I'm really happy, and thank you, Temperhoof, for being on our show and agreeing to being part of this interview and telling the community about the profession workshops.
It's been my pleasure.
All right. Well, then, I guess, again, we'd like to, as Naveen just said, we'd like to thank Temperhoof for coming out, for doing this little interview, and the profession workshops. And where, I guess, we know this already, but when people want to go to look up the profession workshops, is the profession workshop going to be the name of the final website whenever it's up and running?
Well, currently it's being worked on by Guild Wars 2 WVW.com. They're the ones who are gracious enough to pretty much start basically be able to build the project and host it. So they have there's a lot to thank on their part, and currently it's a little offshoot of their website at the moment that they're just kind of throwing stuff on there. If it gets too big for those britches, it may become its own unique website. We'll see. But right now it's just a subdirectory of Guild Wars 2 worldvsworld.com. Be sure you visit their website, and they definitely deserve a lot of credit. They've been working on a lot of these fantastic tools for the upcoming game. There's a lot of great articles there, a lot of great writers, and they have a very good community. Definitely stop by there and just enjoy what they have to offer.
Yeah. And again, we highly recommend the War Map, just to take a look at it if you haven't looked at it already. So, all right. Well, then again, thank you, Temperhoof, for coming out and doing this podcast with us. And I guess in closing, if you have any questions or comments, you want to get a hold of us, it's send your emails to hosts@chroniclesoftyria.com. Temperhoof, if they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Well, the best way to get in contact with me, there are two avenues you can take. I have a Gmail email, and that's just temperhoof@gmail.com. That's a great way to get directly to me. I do check that one much more often than my other emails. And I also mentioned I do have an account over at mmrpg.com. I have a highlighted blog. You can comment on my blog or send me a personal message there. I check that on a daily basis, so that's also a good way to get in touch with me, too.
All right. Well, there you have it. So, for Chronicles of Tyria Podcast, episode number 12, I'm Lagwin.
I'm Naveen.
And we will see you next time.
Let's see here. Favorite pony, go.
Rainbow Dash.
He figures.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was, I got introduced pretty early on, and that was before all the second season character development that made her out to be just a jerk. Because, I mean, that's pretty much what they're like. Hey, who can be, super... I mean, granted, some cool stuff came out of that, like Mare-Duel came out of all of that, which was cool. Mm-hmm. And, the clear references to, the Batman 90s animated series was awesome. Mm-hmm. With the signs and things. But, I think as a second favorite pony, it's probably Pinkie Pie.
Well, Pinkie Pie is my second favorite as well.
So who is your first favorite then?
Twilight Sparkle.
Twilight Sparkle? She's a pretty big favorite, I've noticed, out there for a lot of people. Well,
the thing is, I read a lot of books, I do a lot of writing, and Twilight Sparkle has this ability to kind of just talk intelligently, but sometimes often kind of takes herself too seriously and loses control. So, sound familiar?
Yeah, I gotcha. So, yeah, I mean, I like them all, but I think probably my least favorite as a pony is Rarity. I like her songs a lot, but I don't really like her. She's my least favorite, I think.
We're not designers, so...
That's true. We're not posh and hip and You know.
I can relate with her, as you say, the songs, and one of them being the fact that she was running out of time, and that trying to get all those dresses done, and the crunch, and that stress that everybody was giving her.
Yeah, and trying to please everybody, and you end up trying to please everybody, and you please no one.
There's nobody, yeah.
Yep.
Everyone can relate to that.
A lot of life.
That was a great rehash of a very old song.
Oh, I heard
Broadway
that.
song.
Was it? Okay. I did not know that. Huh.
Should look it up on YouTube. There's a few sources for it. I don't know the name of it right now, but I can do some research after the show if you like.
Yeah, that would be great. I knew a couple of her. I know that song, and I knew maybe some other songs. It seems Rarity mostly songs seem to be kind of taken, or tweaked from existing songs. I thought.
Well, all of them are in a way tweaked from existing songs, but hers are particularly tweaked from Broadway.
Yeah. So yeah, that would actually be really cool. So, anyway, back to podcast-related things, because this could take all night if we start talking about ponies. I'll be here forever. We won't get anything done. This all of a sudden turning into the Chronicles of Tyria Bronycast.
Hey, never know. Never
No,
know.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. I don't know how everybody else will be.
That's going to be the late night podcast.
This is your late night podcast brought to you by Temperhoof. Yes, we're going to be talking about, that's right, boys, ponies. Saddle up and giddy up. Here we go. Here we have our first caller, Applejack. Oh, she says that she is a spunky little cowgirl and really likes to kick with those powerful hind legs of hers. Oh my.
That's totally the end snippet of the show.
Tell me you were recording.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, that is normally we start joking around before we start the podcast, and Naveen always forgets to hit record, and that's when the best funny jokes come out. I'm so proud of you, Naveen.
Thank you.